Good morning. Welcome back. I'm glad to be back. It's early. It's not 5 o'clock in the morning yet, but that's the time that I find that I can do this show. It's before my physical day has opened up to me, so I'm still kind of in a half state of bleary consciousness, and I just come into this room, start asking the question, and the ideas and the thoughts and the consciousness just starts flowing out of me. I don't really know what I'm doing. I find this a worthy question to ask, though. And you just, since I started making this show, it is amazing how many times in a day the question, who am I, even comes up. I'm not talking about for me necessarily, but you hear it. You hear it. People ask this question all the time. It's a relevant question and it's a moving target. And whatever you are identifying with at any given time um, feeds into this answer. I'm not sure exactly how to say that. But in any case, what's the question? Who am I? Who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? What is my design? How do I operate my machinery? How do my systems function? What is this field that I am swimming in? Because I am not just myself or how my personal psychology works, although I certainly am all that. I am also the field. I am um, well, we are. I am my context. What is my context? What's my greater context? How am I playing with it? Now, I ask all these questions at the beginning of the show, and if you're a fan of the show, you could debate about, actually, you could argue, you could beg to differ about whether I even, how well I do about answering those questions. But, you know, I can answer these questions all day long, but you still have to answer these questions, and each and every one of us has to keep answering this question. But this is where I come in. Actually, this is, I think, what I'm getting at. I have a thesis. I believe that humanity in general would just do a way, 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 way better job of our mutual interactions with one another, with how we would just do way better if we knew who we were. And instead of being taught a general sense so that everybody just grows up with this sense of this setup, this configuration, instead of everybody generally getting the idea of how this works, and then we all, grow up and work with each other about how it works. And when we have problems, we all can go to the same rule book. Oh, this is what's going wrong. This is what's happening. This is how I need to focus. Instead, we're all taught wildly different things. And that's fine. I wouldn't subtract anything that anybody's being taught. Because I wouldn't subtract anything, because you can't subtract anything anyway. I believe we live in a universe of addition. You add things to it. You can't take anything away from it. If it's happened, if it's there, there's a frequency that corresponds to it, and that frequency will be forevermore. You can't erase a frequency. I think it's the answer to all of the shows where, I think I was talking about this yesterday. I started to add this little bidly into my circle of conversation You see on TV a lot. There's a theme, and I see it a lot in Doctor Who and a lot in Star Trek. But you see it. There's a lot of shows that talk about timelines erasing other timelines. Nothing's going to erase nothing. You'll just multiply. It'll just be another one of you. So if you break into a timeline, if you go back into a timeline and kill your father, for instance, it doesn't erase the you that you were when you. It, nothing is ever lost. Nothing is ever erased. You just add in on top of it. Now, Abraham always says there's no exclusion in this universe of inclusion. You know? No, she doesn't say inclusion. There's no exclusion in this universe of attraction. It's attraction. It's attraction, attraction, attraction. Well, it's addition, addition, addition. There's never any subtraction. You can't subtract anything out. So just add on to it and keep going. So I wouldn't suggest that anybody... Well, another reason why I wouldn't suggest it is because I happen to be a very... I'm not... I want to make the very least stir in the water as I move. You know? I'm not really asking anybody to change much. I bless 99.9% of everything that we do. And in some ways I bless it all, because even the stuff that we do that's crap is serving us. It just takes a little bit longer to serve us, and we have to get there in our consciousness. And when we finally get there, we'll go, oh, yes. So even the war serves us because it puts peace in the vortex. The fact is that we didn't know how much we wanted peace until we get a big fat bite of the war that we really don't want. Now, back in the old days, we even liked war. Men especially liked war. For men, war was an opportunity for glory, for advancement, for proving yourself in this very uniquely masculine world. They champed at the bit. They wanted the next war. When it would come, well, I don't know if they went so far as to want the next one, but when they inevitably came, men didn't balk at all. It was like, I want to go whip those Yankees. It was a grand tradition for men. But it had to get to the point where, combined with our technology, combined with our populations, combined with our structures and our beliefs and whatever on the ground, the shit that happened last century, I just don't know if I can emphasize how bad it was for us collectively. World War I was a horror. An absolute horror. And what it did to us and what it did to the families back home, I'm talking mostly Europe, because I'm not sure exactly what we did in the war, but it wasn't particularly devastating to America. I mean, nothing ever happened on our soil. What was really, really, the thing that stood out in World War I was the technological advances in warfare, and then the trenches. The trenches were a horror that I don't think anybody expected, and they went on for years. This sort of muddy, bloody, soggy stalemate in France, with trenches on one side filled with German soldiers, trenches on the other side filled with the Allies, filling up with water and blood and boredom and horror and with the no man's land between them. And this whole thing just went on and on and on and on. And millions of people died, and the horrors, the way that they died, the kinds of wounds that came back, everything from the mustard gas in the lungs, and people who looked like they were just fine, who were not just fine, who just died because their lungs could no longer... Oh, did I leave that light on? Could no longer input the oxygen. So World War One, that was its own. But World War Two took it to a new level, and it took it to a new level. It didn't just seem like it was, nations going to war against one another. It was like Hitler was considered like the Antichrist. And it felt like he was the Antichrist. And without thinking of the Antichrist as being a celebrity apex, mythological, and then now you got to look at it in a particular way. Just look at what that whole movement was in consciousness, the Nazi movement, what that whole thing even meant. I have always been so interested in Nazis and World War II, the Holocaust. Really interesting psychological stuff there. Especially when you realize, actually, pull back from what you think is material reality and just understand this truth. All of those Nazis, all of those Germans, they fell into a kind of psychological psychosis, a kind of illness. Paul Levy calls it Wetiko. It is a psychic blindness. It's a psychic mind virus that human beings catch. They catch it from each other. It's a kind of vibrational way of looking at the world. It's a misalignment is what it is. I'm going to come back to this a picture just because I find it very soothing. I like this picture. And when I start to do my slides and stuff, some of my pictures, they help to illustrate what I'm talking about, but I don't really like the spirit that then the video has, because instead of being this beautiful fairy forest house thing, I'm going to go over to a really stupid picture that tells me, that shows me, it illustrates. So this is the picture. This is the one. This is your source self and your physical self. They work together. They should be lined up. You should line them up. Now, I'm not absolutely positive. I scratch my head and think about this because I know that my source mind really is quite a bit bigger than my individual self. And not only that, it's vibrational, purely vibrational in nature. There is no specific physical aspect on the ground about it. Now, where it attaches to me, it is specific to me. But it is where it attaches to me. It is specific to me. I know I just said that, but I wanted to emphasize it. But other than that, it is not specifically, and it's kind of shedding light. You could say it's shining light in a direction. And if you persist in going off in places where your inner being is not shining light, then you end up in this dark area. I think that this is analogous to Wetiko. It is a darkness in our psychology. It is a darkness in our consciousness, in our, and it comes from not taking the light of your inner being. It comes from following instead just from physicality only what I like, what I want, where I think I'm going. Egocentric, focused on you, pinging off the environment, and then so what happens is you believe your negative emotions. Your negative emotions now become justified. You follow their momentum because to you they are justified. Those people are indeed acting in a way that I do not like, and I'm going to get together with other people and we're going to try to figure out how to live it. Well, I'm not sure exactly how this works. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it as I think, as I feel, as I discuss in this show. In the better parts of this show, I will be not regurgitating to you a by rote program that I have just been practicing. The best part of this show sometimes will come when I break through things in my own mind and realize and then articulate new angles on this that I have never hit before. So it's like there's this one thing we're all looking at in a way, but it's way bigger than a lot of people are giving it credit for. It's got way, 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 way more dimensions. You don't have to push back against what anybody else is doing in order to get where you want. There are so many dimensions. Now you could catch one of those dimensions where you get some of it, you push back against some people, and it's a mixture of this instead of a mixture of that, because there is room for every dimension. I have heard this. It resonates in a way. I'm just kind of going with it. There are many, 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 many versions of us. You don't have to push back. So it's like I have said before, this is coming to be one of my lines. My desire to live on a planet Earth, on a version of planet Earth where everything works out. We make it past the apocalyptical moment. We make it to peace on earth, heaven on earth, goodwill towards men, all of that. We get to the place where we are generally connected to Source. We understand who we are, and we are co-creating with each other and with the rest of this planet in joyful, harmonious way, to some extent. I mean, we get at least past the existential crises of things like, global warming and sixth mass extinction and growing deserts and us becoming extinct with it all. We get past that apocalypse. We get past the apocalypse. As a matter of fact, I want to live in a world where we get out ahead of it and we avoid the ultimate apocalypse of the whole planet. I mean, we've had plenty of the Holocaust was apocalyptic. It really was. And it can be that the last one. We don't need to do that again, people. We saw it. There is no us and them. And when we play the us versus them paradigm out to its ultimate conclusion, it is horrifying. And you can either focus that direction and say, oh man, we did it before, we got to do it again. It's just a cycle that we can't avoid. Here we go again. Then we're stupid. What we should be doing is looking at it and examining the whole thing, understanding that it's all us. It's all us. We were the Nazis. We were by the time you get away from it in time, you got to recognize that it's not them anymore, it's all us. I remember when I was younger, and it was easy for me to study these things at first because it was so far away. It was way back in time. Although, hey, I was a child of a um, person who fought World War II, so it wasn't that far away. But it seemed far away to me. It was a way far away in Europe, wherever that was. So I guess it doesn't matter how far away in distance or time. I just felt a distance from it. For one thing, I thought, well, it was Germans who did it. We didn't even do it. We were the good guys, I'm saying to myself. So it was easy for me to swallow the whole thing. And I was fascinated by aberrant psychology. I was always studying things like that, the very edges of aberration, but systems wise. So I was interested in Nazis. I was interested in cult leaders, authoritarians. This authoritarian psychosis, it's an interesting thing because people, this is us, and it's not that they're bad people, it's they're falling. I said I was going to go back to this. These people are falling into a misalignment with their own equipment. They're not bad, they just don't understand who they are. And so that's what I dedicate in service this show, to us understanding who we are, especially for anybody that's got this issue going on, who is in the thrall of authoritarian psychosis in any way. Authoritarian psychosis, I wish it didn't have so many, it's hard for me to say a little bit. I couldn't say it 3 times fast, and I'm not going to try because that's stupid. But it's the term comes from Carl Jung, or as I am using it, it is coming from Carl Jung. I understand what he is saying and what he is looking at as he uses that expression. I also understand and would like to articulate someday, but I don't know if I can. We'll see. Probably not from this direction. Concepts like autonomous complexes. You'll hear me bring up the concept of autonomous complex someday. And when I do, I'm going to say, remember way back when? I was going to mention it. What are these things? Who are we? And how does it work? Well, how it works is that you are two beings. And depending on how you're blending them, and depending on what you're doing with your negative emotion, that is determining your path in life. And whether you are... Hitler served us all. We are all one being, and we are all demonstrating who we are wholly. Now, that I don't like the way that sounds, because that implies what I'm saying is that that we're shit, that there's a Hitler in all of us. We're just bad to the bone. There's a potential for Hitler in all of us. It all depends on how we are using our equipment, how we are aligning our equipment. Now, we've been watching a very, really interesting show. I just found it yesterday. I've watched 2 episodes, and the first episode I watched twice because I watched it, and then the second episode, and I decided that the show was so good that I needed to watch it with my husband, so we went back and watched 1 over again. So I'll be watching it by myself first, and then watching it with him right behind, because it's a really good show. Especially someone like me who is really interested in the psychology of this. The show is called, it's Hitler. It's a show about, it's a brand new documentary series about Hitler on Netflix. I can't remember, Hitler and his henchmen, or I don't know. I can't remember exactly what the name of it is, but it's Hitler and something or other, and it's brand new, 2024, and it's very insightful, and it's very It's not trying to be dramatic. It's just talking about who these people were who did what history knows that they did. You know, where they came from, what kinds of motivations they might have had. Now, I realize that all of that sounds kind of, you know, subjective, but really good stuff. The essence of evil. Now, you look around, you're like, I know evil exists in this world. But let's define evil here. Evil being that which runs contrary to life. Maybe a kind of vibrational frequency that is completely discordant and out of step with all that life is, with all that life needs. It's that kind of a vibration, a discord with the frequencies of harmony of life. You could call that evil. That's I'm going to define for my purposes. If I ever use a word like evil, that's what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about vibrational frequencies in discord with the harmonious synchronicities of life and possibly biological life. I'm not sure. If there is such a thing as evil, that's what it is. Excuse me. I didn't mean to bang the table. So when human beings become evil, what has actually happened to them is something fairly clinical. And the person within, the soul within, is trapped inside this structure around them. So we're going to go back to our slide. I can't avoid this slide. I really would like it to be better. And if you're a fan of the show and wish I had a better slide, then I'm so sorry. You have to know that the thrust of this show is I'm almost radio. I'm radio with I've got a big easel in front of me and a couple of clunky pictures that I can show the group. I don't have PowerPoint. I mean, I do. I just don't use any of the technologies. I mean, I have at my disposal perhaps amazing technology, but I personally am not a visually oriented person, especially as my eyesight gets less. Now, I realize now that through law of attraction and a bit of focal work, I probably could bring my vision back. Theoretically, it ought to be possible for me to just focus on where I see good and believe that my vision can come back and then just go there. Just have it unfold. I'm still a little too, my attention is too much entranced by all of the momentum of the reality around me. I'm air quoting reality. I'm air quoting. Here, I got my air quotes. The reality around me that has brought me to this place where I believe certain things about my eyesight. You know, I have a certain disease. It's got a name, you know, it's been genetically identified and studied by, I got a doctor who, he's like the only person, he's one of the few people who has Stargardt's patients. You know, and there's all this stuff, this momentum of things and people that expect, and I haven't really gotten past it. But I'm pretty sure it should be possible, it should be easily possible for me to get my eyesight back. Certainly way, way, way more difficult things have happened. You know, people healing themselves from physical disorders way worse. You know, like severed spinal cords and, you know, different things like that. I know that Joe Dispenza rebuilt his spinal, not his spinal cord, his not the cord, but his spine. He had a terrible accident, and they told him that he'd never walk again. And the man he's an animal now. I mean, he's buff, he's fit, he walks around like anybody else. They told him that he would never walk again at some point, and he laid there in his hospital bed and he thought it through. I'm pretty sure I could think it through, but it isn't really my own eyesight is not a particular priority at this moment for me. It might get to be a priority at some point, but right now this show is more of a priority. And as a matter of fact, we're getting ready to get on a plane and head back to Connecticut to see this eye doctor. And then while we're there, we're going to have a couple of days in the Berkshires. We're going to have four extra days in Maine, as well as the 2 days in Connecticut. We're going to have, going to go see Gaelic Storm. Got a concert in Portsmouth, New Hampshire on the 18th. We got all kinds of exciting stuff happening. If my eyes were good, then right at this moment, I am not, I can't see the path to doing that trip even. I'm not saying that I made myself blind so that I could do this trip. I'm saying that you gotta understand where all of your things that you think that are bad in your life, where they're serving you. And how to, when you realize how they're serving you, then you can let them go and know that you are clear enough, you're following your own path, your intentional conscious path, you're taking the trips that you want to take intentionally, and you don't have to have these side trips, as the excuse for, you don't have to use your eyes as an excuse to do it, you can just go do it. Somehow, everything that you're doing, that you're believing, is serving you. And in order to be able to let go of some beliefs, you have to find where it's serving you so that you can, it's sort of like, I think that this relates to a concept I call baby and bathwater. People are always judging themselves and then throwing everything out, throwing baby and bathwater out. So say if I went out with my friends, or I went out with my sister whom I love dearly, and in the course of the evening I drank a little too much, and then the following day, now I don't feel very good. Now maybe I had an alcoholic father who had a tough time in life and actually might have even been drinking when he had a car accident and died. It's really hard to know because he died in Mexico. I think the Mexican police have decided that he was drinking, but I don't think that they did a blood alcohol test. I think it was just a question of there was beer in the car. I'm sure it all got, busted up and smelled very beery, and may have been hard to know, how many of those empties had been drank. And it was a stupid accident, so he was probably drinking, So all of these things happen, and now you're beating yourself up. Why did I do that? I must be bad. I bet I'm an alcoholic. I worry that I will follow in the same kind of destructive, I can't control. Anyway, it might spiral out of control, the beating up of yourself that you do. I actually don't know what the words would be, and I don't want to really get in there and touch those either, but maybe you're beating yourself up for all of this, when instead, there's both baby and bathwater in this. There's nothing wrong with you wanting to hang out with your sister. There's actually not even anything wrong with you wanting to feel better. Those first couple of drinks that you did probably did make you feel better. And it was a yes part of your heart that was walking down that path. Now, if you judge the whole thing, then you throw her out too. There was baby with the bathwater there. Find the baby. Throw the bathwater out, but don't throw the baby out too. You're always throwing your baby out. And when you throw all your babies out, when you're always throwing yourself out, It's all bath water. It's all bath water. Now you got no path to follow. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know who you are. You have thrown yourself away in your judgment. Quit judging yourself all the time. Know that there is a you in there that is good. There is a you in there that is true. There is a you in there that is source. There is even a you in there who is connected to your physical self, who is connected to your source self. It's not just your spirit that's good. You are good. We are all good. Each and every one of us is good. And I don't care how bad you are. And each and every one of us is brilliant, and I don't care how stupid you are. And each and every one of us is kind and loving, and I don't care how Hitler you are. I know that there are people who physically come from people who perhaps are Jewish, and they have this tradition of Hitler hatred now because they lived through what Hitler did. And you just can't know. I cannot forgive them because that was just too bad. Well, so this is a question of baby in bathwater again here too, because the them that you want to forgive is not the... To forgive them who did that is not to disregard this pattern of behavior, this thing that must never, ever, ever happen again. So, how to understand this? On the one hand, from a human point of view, and what do I mean by human point of view? That's a good question. Do I mean the humane, the human as opposed to inhuman, or do I mean human as opposed to, is human now the physical side that has the failings? You know, is it the bad or is it the good? Which one do I mean when I say human? Do I mean the light or do I mean the dark? So interesting. This question of this authoritarian psychosis, this Wetiko disease, this condition of the human mind is gonna come up, people. It's gonna come up here in a big way in the United States. Now, it's not gonna go all the way to Holocaust. It's not gonna do it because we did it once. And we have plenty of evidence that it happened, and we have plenty of people who have been studying it, studying this, I don't want to say condition, this pattern, this ever since it happened, there have been scholars on it. On it. Books have been written. Professors have made their reputations. It has been studied, and continues to be studied, by the way, in classrooms. And I imagine as it unfolds around us, it's going to be studied way more intently. In universities, it's going to be more intensely studied, even as it transpires around our ears. I find all kinds of interesting things to observe about it. When you watch shows about World War II even, and there's a lot of really good shows out there about World War II. Foyle's War is a really good one, very insightful, very true to the time, and true to human psychology pretty well. What you notice when you're watching a show, especially if it's well done, there are people who have this psychosis on both sides of the equation. That you can see mean little people with this psychosis condition on the Allies' side. Mean little, clerks and, I'm trying to think of the word that extrapolates the, whatever, I'm not thinking of it. And this is not the time. I don't want, I don't even want 30 seconds of me going, by the time I find the word, I'll have lost the energy thread. So I just got to go back and find this. Watiko, that's Paul Levy's term. And he's one of the gurus I have looked at through the course of my path to coming to this space where now I ask this question and I have this thesis. This thesis statement says that if we generally understood who we were, we would be all of our suffering, all of our major problems come from us not knowing who we are and not intentionally, consciously lining up with ourselves. We got to do it. We cannot believe our negative minds. Our negative minds are there for an impulse reason. They're to run away from the tiger. Our adrenaline, our hormones of stress are to be followed in an impulsive moment when there's something, immediately on the ground that is after us that we have to run away from. It is not meant to churn out philosophies of the meaning of the world around us. When we do that from our negative mind, we get scenarios like what Hitler was doing. He was taking his anger, his frustration, his disappointment, his all of the negative emotions that he felt about how life had treated him and what had not happened to him and for him in his world. He took all of those negative emotions and churned them into philosophy and conclusions about how to act and what we should be doing and who was to blame and all that kind of stuff. And he was wrong. He was wrong about all of that. I mean, there might have been moments when he noticed yeah, that family has money and their name is Nussbaum. They must be, controlling everything or whatever. He might have noticed some things that were true and mixed it in with a whole bunch of shit that wasn't, or that was generalized in the wrong way based on spirits that are not valid, and he churned it into statements about who was at fault, about what the problem was. He was not articulating the problem correctly. He was not identifying the source of the problem correctly. So what is the source of all of our suffering? That's a good question. Sometimes this is the first slide that I choose besides that aperture slide showing source mind and physical mind. This actually, I think this is closer. I would adjust this slightly to this conversation that we're having here now. So these are the 5 kleshas. These come from, I'm pulling these from Buddhist philosophy. These are considered to be the 5 root causes, or the root causes of all suffering. It comes from not knowing what is real. We don't know what's real. We don't know what our source is. We don't know where the source of reality is coming from. We don't know where the objects are coming from that appear in front of us, and then they become, and then they be-go. Where is reality coming from? Who's responsible for the badness when it occurs? You know, there obviously isn't a God out there, they might say, because evil abounds. They are evil, they are evil, they are evil. And isn't it funny when any being starts focusing on the evil and pointing to it, how they might as well just be with their other three fingers pointing right back at themselves, because they are now carrying that vibrational evil. It's because we live in a vibrational universe. Now, I would actually emphasize number 4 here, identifying with an imaginary self. But it's not really identifying with an imaginary self. Let's go back to this slide that we were just at. You are these two selves. The bigger part of yourself is actually your source self, your vibrational self, your continual self, your continuum of self, your eternal self, your self that is the whole field, your self that is the formless coming into the form. That's the you that you really are, because that's who you always are, that's who you continually are, that's who you are connected to the greater part of, it's your vibrational self, your source self. That's who you really are. But you might not know anything about that. You might think that that vibrational self that really is you, you might think it's something else, like God, who can forsake you, you know. Oh, why have you forsaken me, God? Well, God never forsakes you. It's the other way around. It has to do with the thoughts that you are taking. Are you in alignment with your source, or are you not in alignment with your source? How you feel is your indication of which way you went with that. If it feels good, you're in alignment. What does that mean? It means resonant frequencies. It means you're thinking thoughts that are, in general, they're the same kind of thoughts. Loving, kind, inclusive, hopeful, expansive, like not resistant, non-resistant thoughts. Where are you in this? Are you all gobbed up in the resistance down here on the ground? Let go of your resistance. Everything is actually okay. Now, in a way, everything is not okay at all. In places, there are places where it is not okay. It's not okay in Gaza. It's not okay in places in the Ukraine. It's not okay in places in the United States. There are places where it's not okay, but why is it not okay there? It's always because people are not understanding who they are. They're not taking their messages from their broader perspective, from their larger self. They are not in alignment with, and maybe there's good reason. Maybe I'm not in alignment because I'm really unhappy because I have a mean, abusive husband and I don't have any money and I have a couple of babies and I can't feed either one of them. I live in some nasty hovel somewhere and it's too hot. I don't know. I'm just making it up. So say if I'm in that kind of a situation, yeah, okay, that's why I feel bad. Well, no matter where you are and no matter what is happening to you, you are being given guidance of relief from wherever you are, no matter how bad it looks on the outside for you. And there is such a spread right now. There is so much abundance, opulence, comfort. The level of comfort and ease with which some people are living their lives at this moment is off the charts amazing. The level of discomfort and, whatever, that some people are living is off the charts. The poverty or the lack. There is an enormous spread. The reason for that is not because it's a zero-sum game. And some people have just taken it all. And because they have taken it all, then there isn't anything left for anybody else. That's not why. It's because we don't understand who we are and how it works. Because if those people living in lack understood who they were, they would understand the path to walk out of the lack. All of us can walk out of the lack. And I think it's going to come from us knowing who we are. And that's why I do this show. That's why I do this show every day. I have an interesting announcement, an exciting, fabulous announcement to make to my fans if they are interested. I think coming in July, I'm going to do a marathon session. I'm going to, for my birthday, I'm going to ask for a day of my own. It's not going to be on my actual birthday because that day we're going up to Ojo Caliente and we're going to check out the healing waters up there. Healing waters, I'm air quoting that right now. And just have a nice, relaxing, blessed time up there on my birthday with my beloved. But for my birthday, I'm going to ask for a day all of my own. And what I'm going to do with it is I would like to do a marathon session. I would like to start with my show first thing in the morning like I always do. And instead of ending at an hour and a half, I want to see how far I can go. If I was given a whole day, how many different ways I could block out the session, because I could probably have hours where I just talk about divine autonomy and hours where I just talk about the divine matrix, where we talk about the quantum field and the spinning nature of space-time. We can talk about black holes. We can talk about, I could have an hour or two where it's just nothing but the physics angle, and we talk about all the different ways to understand the physics of this magnificent divine matrix that we are a part of. And then I might talk about, I might just talk about aberrant psychology for, I don't know, and do it from dawn to dusk. I want the whole damn day. Maybe I'll talk my husband into going somewhere for overnight. He doesn't work anymore. He used to go TDY, and I would do this, but I've never done a marathon session. I've never gotten to the point where I could think that I could talk to myself for 12 hours straight, or however. I don't know how long it would go. I can take breaks and come back, comfort breaks, food breaks, whatever. So if you're a fan of the show, keep an eye out for that, because I might have a 10-hour session dropping on us before the summer's out. I would like to do that, see how far I could get. But anyway, so who am I? Who am I? I think that we have been operating on some assumptions this morning. We're a vibrational being in a vibrational universe. I think we've kind of assumed that for the purposes of the last almost hour. I'm coming up on the first hour. I only have a half an hour left. That's why I think I need a marathon session. I haven't really been doing my usual prescribed performance. I'm just talking, riffing about stuff. I do have a couple of listeners, and I'm so excited. I don't know if they're the same people, but most days, one or two, I can see on the views, a couple of them show up. A lot of times I get a thumbs up like. I'm really liking that. I hope I don't have somebody that's watching me that's seething. This is a bunch of crap. Let's listen to her spout her crap again today. So who am I? It's a good question. Where did we come from? That's a good question. I actually have come to believe, and the more I believe it, the more I think that it actually makes sense. It fits a lot of things. It makes a lot of other things sort of click into place. We do seem to be a little off on the planet. There is question about whether we're going to go extinct or not, even though there are 8 billion of us on the planet. Can you imagine what 8 billion people going extinct is going to look like? If we were dwindling down to the last 10 of us and somebody was worried about us going extinct, that's one thing. That means, 10 people are on their way out. But 8 billion of us going extinct, that means we're crashing. That would be a crash of monstrous proportions involving many, 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 many individual heartbreaking stories. We do not want to do that, people. We do not want to do that. We don't even want to play with that. And quite frankly, I don't think we have to. I think we just need to know who we are. And then in general, our main systems, our main collective systems that do things like provide us energy and communications, education, transportation, all of our main systems need to be in alignment with who we really are. How do you do that? How do you make sure that happens? Well, I think it's important for all of us to understand what our emotions really are. First of all, what these energies that are produced when we look certain ways or when certain things happen. So our emotions come from life. Some of our emotions are just us looking certain directions, and some of our emotions come from true existential difficulties. Like, if I and my people are being crushed by a larger power, or starved, or I'm having real physical issues out in the world, that's one thing, and I have these emotions about them. That builds human emotion one way. Yes? Also, human emotion can just come from looking at something in the wrong way, or taking a very small thing and blowing it way out of proportion. Like I stub my toe and then I rail against the universe at its injustice, and I work myself into a froth because I have stubbed my toe. So, human emotion, there's human emotion and then there's human emotion. Every child, as they grow up, whether or not they have real problems or not, they almost need to align somewhere in there. They need to see real problems so that because have you noticed that even the people who we would think have no problems at all turn out to have all kinds of problems? Like people who are beautiful. They're beautiful and they're rich and their parents are famous and they grow up in these lifestyles of privilege and comfort, and yet they have terrible problems. They seem to have as many problems growing up as people with real problems. There's something about the human psyche. I need to think about this one on my own. And this bigger idea that I'm trying to speak. Perhaps I should stay in a lane where I can articulate the words more smoothly. I don't want to get lost down a dark alley where I don't know what the audience has heard, and I'm not sure where to go after that. So let's talk about negative emotions. Negative emotions are when you take the hormones of stress, adrenaline, cortisol. There are other ones that are released in our bodies when things in our physical environments need us to be hyper vigilant or have more energy to run away from something, or our minds are activated because we have to we are in threat. So we get these hormones that course through our bodies, and they cause us to think negatively. They are the hormones of anxiety, of stress, of whatever. You gotta know who you really are. You are good. You are whole. And you are two selves. And those two selves need to be in alignment with one another. Part of yourself is this eternally positive vibration, relentlessly positive. It is love itself. It's love. It's actually a pulsing communication that you are getting from a single point. And this single point is everywhere. So it's coming from everywhere. There is no locality to it whatsoever. It is a shared point. It is a point that we all share. And this thing that you're getting is actually the information of all the universes. This is where the philosophical meets the physical, actually. This is actually where it is. This is where reality comes into being. This is where the vibrations actually begin. This is how matter and mass comes across the event horizon of the 0-point energy field. This, as it does, it is, let's see, it is spinning. As these Planck oscillators come across the event horizon, they are spinning. And the reason that's important is because you have to understand that gravity isn't a secondary effect. It's a primary motion. It's not like matter comes into being and the mass that it is bending the space, and so that's where gravity comes from. It's not like that. It's the mass that comes across the event horizon is spinning, and that's where gravity comes from. And that's different. It's different. It is the explanation of dark matter and dark energy too, by the way. Nassim has a wonderful explanation of what dark matter is. It's a fudge factor. It's a mathematical fudge factor that was put in by the physicists by, I think it was, who is the one? I have to go back and see who it was that had to add the fudge factor. Who it was that came up with the number. Because in order for the universe to hold together, it has to have a certain amount of gluing forces. It has to have a certain amount of weight or mass or energy to hold it together. If you just look at the visible mass in the cosmologically not dense universe, it's not enough to hold it all together. And so you have to add this fudge factor in, and they don't know what it is, so they call it dark matter. And it's 96% of the equation, by the way. All they can see, this tiny little bit that they can see, is actually, so the whole field is this dense Planck field. And the only thing that you can see is where it's spinning. The rest of it is sort of lined up in a crystalline form. It's not coherent. It's just, it's not, it's, anyway, it connects us all. It is, it is holographic also. The way it's holographic is through an interference pattern. If you understand how a conventional hologram is made, you take a laser beam, split it in two. One you don't really pick up any information on. You just redirect it with mirrors to a point where it's going to meet the other one. The other one, it goes and scans an object, and then with this information of the scanned object, you take that information, you go back, and you interfere with the first one. And you make this the whole thing now is in this one point. And actually, that was my own words, and I misspoke. That's not exactly what it is. Through the interference pattern that is created when these two things meet back up, the interference pattern contains all the information of what the one scanned. So, like, say they scanned an apple, and then it goes back. It's the interference pattern, the wave of interference that holds the wholeness of the information. So, since how the universe is exchanging information across all the scales, across all the universes, across everything, how it is exchanging information is through this Planck field jiggling with itself. And then there's screening the mechanisms so that all of the information doesn't come at you all at once. It comes at you with a hierarchy. All of the stuff that's close to you is first, and then what's farther away from you comes later. But I don't know how to explain this. But the mathematics has been done, and that's important because technology follows the mathematics. And our physicists need to be in the labs figuring all of this out now. There's reasons why they aren't. There are real reasons why they aren't. Good reasons why they aren't. The good reason why they aren't is that our consciousness needs to rise. We need to get to the level where we can be trusted with this kind of energy. Because when we tap into source, that means clean, free, sustainable, like through devices that don't break because they are not, they're solid state, no moving parts. Clean, free, unlimited energy for everyone. Everyone, 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 everywhere. Everyone, everywhere. We're not ready for that yet. Here in the United States, we are fixing to elect someone who in a different day, a different time. Well, so we are not electing, we're not going to elect the angry ideologue, the passionate ideologue like Hitler was. This is the angry, disgruntled, aggrieved mob boss that we're fixing to elect. It's going to be a different dynamic, by the way. It's going to be a smash and grab as opposed to an ideological push to control the world, because most of the United States is not going to go and bomb. Now, there are places where a lot of Americans would bomb. They'd probably bomb China or Iraq or, I don't know, Russia, perhaps. I don't know. I don't know what the state of the madness actually is here in the country. But it's not going to play out because we're not as naive as Germans were back in the 30s. We are not as naive as that. As a people, as human beings on this planet, we have come a long way in the last 100 years. You know, we are way different than who we were in 1924. And so, as such, this is going to play out different, but there are parts of this pattern that are us that we need to find. We need to see who we are. We need to see these dark energies as well as the light energies. We need to understand what we have a tendency to fall into being when we do not understand our negative emotions, when we do not understand our binary nature, and understand that you cannot build your philosophy based on your negative emotions and believe that it is in alignment with the field around you, because the field around you is pure positive energy. It really is. Now, what you're going to be doing if you go with your negative emotions, you're going to be part of the destructive pattern. And as we build things that are not sustainable, it is really important that we have destructive forces in place that will tear them back down. Non-sustainable means just that, people. Ain't gonna sustain. Just because you can't see past your nose doesn't mean I can't. So we really need to be building systems that are in alignment with who we are, that are in alignment with the rest of the field around us, that are in that provide, that account for us all, that all of us can tag into when we get up to speed, you know? And then it's just a question of individuals getting up to speed in our consciousness, and then we can tag into the supply chain of humanity, the supply chain, everything from, you know, in consciousness on the internet to goods and services, foods and technologies that all of us want to share in, as all of us are inventing these things and producing these things. We want to share them with each other. We do. We are wonderful. We are fabulous creatures. We are the busy beavers of the universe. We are the playful otters of the universe. We are the orchestra conductors of the universe. We're also the assholes of the universe when we do not know who we are. And so I think it's really, really important for us to tap into our broader perspectives. We all exist in a bigger context. We do. We just do. And more we are expected to operate consciously within this bigger context. What do you think we're being asked to do when we go vote for somebody? That's a bigger context. I'm voting for people I don't actually know in places far, far away. You know, I am only tangentially in touch with who they are by way of the internet, you know, and looking at little snips and snippets of what they say and what other people say about what they say. You know, I'm already expected to understand my greater context. I come from a greater context of history. All the wars that we have fought, they need not be for nothing, actually. But we need to stop fighting wars. We need to know who we are. We need to find our peace on earth. And we will. All of those wars that we have fought have been launching for humanity rockets of desire for peace. And peace is very, very surely, very clearly in our vortex. Peace on earth, goodwill towards men. That is my target. I am tired of living in a world where every time I turn around, I hear a story about how human beings, just being themselves, are destroying the planet, each other, I'm tired of it. It doesn't have to be this way. I know that it is this way because we don't know who we are. And so, to that, in service to that expanded consciousness, come I into this space to help out. I ask the question, who am I? And my agenda is twofold. On the one hand, and probably the bigger thrust of what I say is going to be explanations of our binary systems and our inner being and our broader perspective, our source energy minds, the meaning of our emotional guidance system, and how to walk our path. What anything means about anything. That's going to be probably the biggest part of it. But I know that a lot of why we are suffering right now is being caused by an artificial paradigm of scarcity that is, on the one hand, caused by our consciousness of scarcity. We are in scarcity consciousness right now, and out of our abundance consciousness, we don't realize that we are actually abundant in our scarcity consciousness. We just have an abundance of lack. And we see so much lack. Oh my God, there is so much lack. It's because we're always abundant. We just have to find our true abundance. This field that we are co-creating with is so abundant in nature that if we would align our purposes with its purposes, we would co-create mutual abundance beyond our wildest imagination. And that's where I want to get to. So when I do my marathon, I'm hoping by the end of the day, I have left our current paradigm of reality far, far, far behind. I have illuminated it and elucidated it to ad infinitum. I mean, to exhaustion. So I've circled around that. I've covered it. And then I get past it to where we're going, people. Do you know how cool this world is going to be? We just have to get over ourselves. We need to understand, on the one hand, how cool we are. But we got to understand where we're cool. Our coolness comes from the inside. Our setup, our nature is magnificent in this divine matrix that we are swimming in. Our emotions sing to the cosmos, and the universe sings back to us. We've just got to learn how to sing, because when we go into negative emotion, it's not singing anymore. It's this coughing, this unholy snorting. It's like we're coughing up a fur ball, and the universe responds back with all this crappy, goopy shit because it is listening to us. Our emotions are so powerful, and this universe is so synergistic, synchronistic, and holographically connected that through our positive emotions, we can line up with this universe and get everything we want. Through our negative emotions, we bang around in a chaotic, incoherent kind of way, acting half of the time, walking 180 degrees away from what we want, and then turning around and walking for a second in the direction of what we want, and then turning back and walking in the opposite, and then in the direction, and then in the opposite, and then in the direction, and then in the opposite. And we wonder why we never get anywhere. We need to understand who we are, understand positive momentum, understand focus and attention, and start focusing our attention in the direction of what we want, instead of being transfixed and mesmerized by the display of all that we don't want that stands in front of us in manifested material reality. Disregard it. It means nothing. Well, it's a springboard. It is the road we are traveling on, but we need not focus on it. It's like you focus on where you're going and what you want. And then you're like, yeah, I see what we got. Okay, but this is where we're going. Okay, yeah, this is what we got. I see what we've got to work with is this. All right, and this is what we're going to do with it because this is where we're going. Do you see? You just keep moving to where we're going. Just keep tagging it back to where we're going, where we're going, where we're going. Instead of standing there transfixed in this like, oh my God, look how awful. Look how awful that is. That is just so awful. Look at what we're doing. Look at what we're doing. Look who we are. Ugh. Look at what we're doing. Ugh. Do you see what that does to us? We go nowhere when we do that. We got to know who we are and where we're going. And so that's part of the question. That's part of the question of the show. Who am I? Who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? How does this work? How do I get what I want? What is what I want? What is what I want? I'll tell you what I want. I want systems that work. I want sustainable systems that work sustainably. I want people who understand who we are, who understand that we are love, not hate, that we are united, not separate. And you know what? It doesn't matter how separate we look. We are united, and you don't have to try too hard with that one, by the way, people. When you try too hard to be one, when you do it from the outside, you end up with groupthink and lockstep. And that is certainly what we do not want. Our individuality is such a blessing. It's so important. And I think that's part of what the United States is going to bring to the equation of the world, because we are 300 million people who have been taught to be just ragingly independent. And you know what? That's not all bad. Even the people out there who do not know who they are and are contributing to the storms right now, their raging independence still serves us. We just have to know who we are and where we are really going with this. We have to get to a place where, on the one hand, in general, we're lined up with one another. But it's not because we've been forced to. It's not because half of us are forcing the other 51% of us are forcing the other 49% of us to go in the opposite direction. So all of us, just like in group think and lockstep, we're forcing you this way. It has to be every individual calls their own path. It has to be. Even if I don't like the path that you are choosing, it has to be. Every one of us must be free to call their own path. And then the responsibility is for us to raise our consciousness, for us to understand who we really are. And then if I want you, from a government standpoint, perhaps maybe I want you to take a vaccine because it's a good idea. Because smallpox has been unleashed back in the world and you don't know what's coming. So the answer is, whether you like it or not, if you want me to take a vaccine, you absolutely have to convince me to take it. You can't force me. You should not ever be able to force me. I don't care if you say it's for the greater good. I don't care. And if I don't take the vaccine and then 100 million of us die, and then we all look around and go, man, we should have taken the vaccine, that's fine. That's fine. The truth will out. But it's also possible that we didn't need to take that vaccine, and you forced it down our throats, and we shouldn't have been forced to take it. The thing is if you have to convince us, then you have to be trustworthy. You have to, your intentions have to be my intentions. Your intentions have to be in alignment with the wholeness. If they aren't, I can feel it, I can tell it, and then you have to force me because I don't agree with you anymore. Now, I know that there's going to be some growing pains with all of this. When we have clean, free energy and everybody gets it, they can all scatter into the woods. On the one hand, they can scatter into the woods and they can make their own little private Idahos. They can make their own little private little cults and their own little whatever. And then the job of us is going to be to try to get information into the cults. But the information that we have to bring into them is going to be really simple, because the information is, who am I? And when that information comes to anybody, even if they're isolated within a cult, when they realize their setup, their configuration, and then they're going to be immune from a cult leader when they understand who they are. I am the whole universe. I am magnificent. I am directly connected to universal consciousness, as are you. What happens is, when you have, why a cult leader is even born is because they stumble onto, maybe they live in an oppressed society, a suppressed society, where people are led to believe that they are less than the bigness that they really are. But you have an individual who comes across, for whatever reason, comes across a momentum within themselves, a non-resistance within themselves, and they stumble into universal consciousness. Then they imagine that they are the only ones there. Then they see their bigness, their greatness, in a whole different light, and they march forward into that greatness with a momentum that cannot be stopped, even if it's a negative one. This is why Hitler was able to convince the millions that he could, because the millions that he was convincing did not understand the situation. They did not recognize the problem. What's the deal with negative emotion? What's the deal with positive emotion? Who am I really? I am this loving, connected, infinite consciousness. That's what I really am. They didn't know that. And so it was easy to convince them that somebody was out to get them, that those people were all bad, that we need to... I don't know. I do believe that us knowing who we are brings us a kind of immunity from this problem. That is all that we need to know in order to take what the information we've got on the ground and run with it into the future that we're all looking for. That future of freedom and abundance and connection and joy and collective human systems in alignment with the biological field of the rest of the planet, so that we are neither destroying ourselves nor the rest of this beautiful, glorious, gorgeous, amazing planet that we live on. If you know me, you know, and I haven't even said this once yet. Have I? Have I said? If I said it way earlier in the program. My two agenda points are, on the one hand, to understand ourselves psychologically so that we can quit creating demons in this world, so that we can quit unleashing demons. We unleash demons by letting them drive our own human vehicle. How do we do that? When we take our negative emotions seriously and run with them to spin out reasonings about our life in the negative space. That's creating demons. That's Shiva energy. That's all kinds of stuff. That's all kinds of chaos that we do not need. What we need is to understand who we are, and we need to get off fossil fuels, because fossil fuels is what is immediately causing the greatest amount of physical disturbance to the biofield of planet Earth. Oh, wrong one. This is where I started. This is my links. I'm going to put it up in the description of this video. It's going to have all these links. Lost Century and How to Reclaim It. That's the documentary series that talks about the century, more than a century, of ruthless suppression of devices that could have, would have, should have incrementally just kind of gently gotten us off of fossil fuels. At least to the extent that we use fossil fuels now, we would have a way different economy, a way different scenarios we would be looking at had these devices been allowed to come to light. But I also believe that consciousness needed to rise. We have The Origin of Mass and Nature of Gravity. Go check that out. It's a paper. It's that video describing the paper. Actually, the paper is listed later down. We have Quantum Revolution, 12-part series on Gaia. Nassim Haramein explaining unified physics. The Connected Universe, that was a movie made about it, narrated by Patrick Stewart. Check it out. Living in the Future's Past, that's Jeff Bridges. He's talking about us as a superorganism made of oil, all that. We need to get off of oil. We need to get on to source energy, frankly. Then Butterfly Dreaming, that's just Paul Levy. I always mention him, so there's an article of his. I should change the article. Tomorrow I will. There will be a different article there, not Butterfly Dreaming. There'll be something else. The Origin of Mass and Nature of Gravity paper, and then the Whirling Dervishes, link to that, because everything is spin. Everything is whirling. Everything is whirling. That is the root, the fundamental motion of all the universe is spin. Everything is spin. You can't have anything without spin, as a matter of fact. So with that, I'm going to leave you. By the way, I do believe we are genetically modified, but I didn't say anything about that. And since I've passed an hour and a half, watch one of my other shows. I'll talk to you about that. All of my other shows talk about it. As a matter of fact, it has to do with human chromosome number 2. Go check it out. And with that, I'm going to leave you until tomorrow. And until tomorrow, know that I love you. I love you, whoever you are. We should love ourselves. Hold on one second. I love you. I bid you peace. I wish you well. And until tomorrow, may the source be with you.